Hello everybody. Herzlich willkommen. Here in the plenary room, we were just discussing what this room might be used for usually because of its distinctive layout. I think it's a very nice and cozy atmosphere for our session. My name is Jakob von Lindern. I report on technology for ZEIT and ZEIT Online. In the last years, that means mostly I report on AI. And I have 5 guests with me here on stage, it says here, but like in front of you. And who I want to give most of our 55 minutes that we have together to discuss about our topic. So I'll keep introductions brief. We will talk about European competitiveness in the age of AI and about the social impact of technology with these guests. I start in the order that they stand next to me. You work at IESE, you're a professor for strategic management, and you teach artificial intelligence and innovation strategy. Welcome, Samsa Samila. It says here last but not least, but you're the second one. Yeah. Also an educator, the managing director of the TUM campus in Heilbronn, which is a place dedicated to lifelong learning, covering topics such as digital transformation and sustainability. Please welcome Daniel Gottschald. A colleague of Samsa, she grew up in California and is now the executive director of the Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Management Initiative at the IESE Business School in Navarra. Welcome, Xili Wu. You are the head of the GovTech campus Baden-Württemberg, where you work on connecting federal, state, and local governments with innovative tech players. Welcome, Jens Mosthaf. And now I cue my last but not least line from before. And I have to scroll. You are the managing director of the appliedAI Institute for Europe, which you described in an interview once as a harbor in the vast seas of AI. Welcome, Frauke Goll. Daniel, it's hard to talk to you and to you as well. At the TUM campus in Heilbronn, professionals from all kinds of companies come to learn about the future of AI, working with AI. And what is your impression? Is the German Mittelstand, as we call it, ready for what is coming?
That's a dangerous question. It has to be ready. We have to make it ready. That is super important. Since 2018, Technical University Munich is in that region, that place in Heilbronn, and in particular for that very special reason, because that region is something like the homeland of German Mittelstand. Highest density of hidden world market leaders, family owned since 2 or 3 or 4 generations. So that's why we went there. And that's why we went there to build up a campus for the digital age. Because it was super clear for us. Such a campus shall not be established as a satellite or a spaceship somewhere on a green field. It has to be established close to the backbone of our industry. Since decades and generations. That's why we are there. Are they all super ready and super digitalized? Probably not. But I would say at the moment that is not the core problem. Because if you have a look at similar developments like Industry 4.0, are all companies now Industry 4.0 ready? Is their production Industry 4.0 ready? Probably not, but they all apply sensors, they all apply smart devices within their production at certain relevant points. So it's the same regarding AI and other topics of digital transformation. These Mittelstand companies, they are the ones who probably will be able to define the relevance of AI applications, at least for our market, at least for our ecosystem, because they talk to their industrial customers. They are hundreds of companies producing sensors, producing whatsoever. They have to be included into the definition of relevant AI applications for our European market. That is why we are there. We have to enable them. We have to give them the sovereignty to define that relevance of AI. And that is going on because these companies, with their strong history and with their openness towards innovation, will help us realizing the digital age, or in other words, you may say our Silicon Valley is 200 years old.
Thank you. Frauke, you work with some of these players as well. And I mean, AI is still a field where the speed of what's going on is so immense. I mean, every week we have a new hype around new features. Just this morning, a colleague kept sending the pictures he generated with the new OpenAI generation feature of Donald Trump wearing a mullet and a beer helmet and everything. But also on a structural level. We saw DeepSeek demonstrating what China is capable of. We saw in the USA Project Stargate, where hundreds of billions of dollars are about to be invested. Is Europe, are the European companies catching up to that speed?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jakob. I really like this, and it tells a lot about how we see ourselves, I would say. So actually, I would have maybe answered this question last year differently than I answer it today. As you directly before me heard, our Silicon Valley is 200 years old. I like this, Daniel. This is really a very good one. However, especially last year, we had always, when it comes to the question of AI and where do we stay in Europe, we had always this picture of, okay, we are looking right and we are looking to the left and, oh, we are left behind. So actually, I was always wondering, why do we really think that? Why is that the case? Because we do have so many strengths in Europe and especially also in Germany. Why do we don't we trust ourselves? So what I really like now, and the year is quite young, but nevertheless, Jakob, you also mentioned there were some activities in the AI field, but also around that put some other directions. And I would say I can realize a mindset shift. And this really, really I do like. Why is that the case? Because what I really strongly believe is that we can keep the race. And it's not, we're not running already far away and everything is better outside Europe and outside Germany. This is absolutely, in my terms, not the case. We do have our strengths. And what I see now, due to the geopolitical shifts we had due to the new election and the getting in force of the new president in the United States, but also with the technological developments that we see. I have the feeling, and then the AI Action Summit came up in Paris. And since then, I have the feeling we now really also looking to our European way. And this is what we have to do. We really need to look at our strengths. Of course, America do has its strengths. Maybe they have more possibilities in terms of financing and investment. Maybe not. Maybe they have more talents. Yes, they do. However, it's the way we take now action and really bring the whole speed into the development and the application of new technologies. So I think what we really have to do is really to stay together, collaborate, that we also need interdisciplinary topics. So this is also now why I really like working together in ecosystem developments and bringing together industry, academia, but also the government, because this is what we need, really working together and take action.
Thank you. You mentioned the geopolitical situation, which is obviously the topic of most of the sessions here to various degrees. Also, this one is no exception. I mean, the tone that we talk about sovereignty, which is in the title of this session, has shifted dramatically. I mean, billions of euros will be allocated towards defense. And what does that mean for our tech stack, Samsa? Do we need our own complete tech stack? Do we need European LLMs? Do we need infrastructure to remain independent, to become independent?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do I need to elaborate on that?
Yes, please elaborate.
Oh,
it's always, it's always
a
rookie mistake.
Yes.
It's a rookie mistake to ask a yes or no question.
Yeah. Okay. The answer is yes. The long answer. The long answer is that the long answer is that it depends on sort of the time scale we're talking about. Is this the first priority that we need to get LLMs? Not necessarily. However, I do think that we need to be sort of investing towards developing our own entire tech stack. All of this was fine. We were, starting around 2000 or so, or even earlier, we were moving sort of with WTO and everything else. We were moving towards a world of interdependence, and sort of we trade, and Americans develop certain things, we Europeans do other things, and China does other things. However, now, the world has changed. That's no longer the case. There was a nice article in Foreign Affairs a couple of days ago where they said, US's objective was that China would eventually become more like the US, open, market. However, the situation has turned around, and now US is becoming more like China. And so US is closing up to a degree that it was not happening before. And so, if we as Europe are now dependent on sort of fundamental core technologies, on whether it's US or China, that severely limits, in a potential military conflict, for instance, what we could do. So I do think the long answer is that yes, ultimately we do need to go there. Is that sort of, given all the other investment priorities right now, is a European LLM beyond what Mistral is already doing? Is that the highest priority? That, I leave as an open question. Is it the highest priority? What I think sort of is even more urgent is on the adoption side. And this is what I thought was interesting yesterday. For those of you who saw the BCG presentation where it said, Europe is actually doing quite well in their measurements on the adoption side. Now, I would have to dig into, because not every measurement looks exactly the same, but I do think that that's sort of one area where we fundamentally need to, and sort of that ties into what others were saying here earlier. We really need to be investing in the adoption side, that we take good advantage of this technology and also, manage its impact on society.
You mentioned the idea of our our version of Silicon Valley. Xili, you grew up in Silicon Valley, like the Silicon Valley, not our Silicon Valley, but theirs. And I mean, this is probably the region that was shaped most by the tech industry in the world, for better or worse. And I mean, we have the public, the social impact in the title of the session as well. Like, from growing up there, in your experience, what social responsibility for their environment do tech companies have?
Well, first of all, pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me here. Yes, indeed. I grew up in Silicon Valley, and you've heard a lot about research and policy, what it could do. I like to speak from my personal experience. So when I was going to high school, the town that I grew up in, it's a very middle-class place. My high school best friends' parents were small business owners, teachers, UPS truck drivers, and they were able to afford their own homes. Not luxury homes, but modest. And over the last 10 years or so, every time I go home to visit, my family's still there, I go every year. A lot of my friends have kept on saying, this is no longer the America or the California we grew up in. In what sense? In many, many senses, but one of which is that these same parents who are teachers, small business owners, can no longer afford the homes that they used to own. So actually in our town, they have built a lot of mobile homes. I don't know if you know what they are. They're very, prefabricated, very cheap homes. So that's becoming a trend. So there's like 4 mobile parks. So I guess what I'm saying is Silicon Valley, yes, it's a hotbed of innovation. I'm not going to say anything negative about that. There's a lot of good things to learn. But also, it has the American Silicon Valley model has created this inequality, has exaggerated this gap, this wealth gap. So I think, like my colleagues up here have said, that we don't need to emulate exactly the Silicon Valley from America. There are many good things to learn. For example, building the ecosystem, that's very, very, very much needed. But Europe has a chance to build your own unique Silicon Valley, or another name, another innovation model that actually could be better. So I'll stop there.
We'll dive in later. A European tech sector, how does that translate to the Mittelstand and to the industry? How do we ensure not too many people get left behind? This is the range of our topic that spans our topic. But before we dive in, I'd like to ask, why? Why all that? What's at stake? What's to gain? Jens, you focus on the interplay of the private and the public sector and work on a more digitized state. What does, paint a utopian picture for us, what does a state look like that is really digitized, that really uses AI, that is like, what do we do it for?
Well, first of all, I would say it's maybe, and that's maybe a surprise, it will be more human, right? Why is that? Because I think AI can do a tremendous job in helping everybody, but also especially in the public sector, to help with routine work, like ease the burden all our people in administration have from the daily routine work. And that maybe brings us time and capacity to really have time for the more complex things, which means people working there can concentrate maybe more on the citizen with the more complex challenges. So in that case, especially if we consider that until 2030, depending on the numbers you are looking for, 1/3 of the people working in the German administration are going to retire. So we need heavy technology if we would like to support our state in really making his work. And that in the end leads also to the case of democracy. So we as citizens, we expect like our federal state to function, right? And there won't be people replacing that 1/3 who are going to retire. On the other hand, maybe also speaking as a citizen, I would aim for a state which is maybe a little bit more proactive. For example, if my driver's license is coming to an end, maybe it's a good thing to be, reminded in advance from the federal state and just get the information like your driver's license is running out, so we automatically prolong it. We will send it to you. Maybe already the payment for it is done, and hopefully it will become a bit cheaper than it is nowadays.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's go back a bit to the beginning, to the idea of a European Silicon Valley, or maybe not even a European Silicon Valley, but something else. I'd like to try to work out with you together, like, what is the European model? What can it be? So when I understand you correctly, it's a mistake to look at the US and try to be there at their own game. I think to some extent that's fairly obvious because we won't. When you hear like 500 billion euros are invested in infrastructure in just one project, I mean, let's see if they are actually invested, but at least it's fairly realistic that they will be. These are numbers we probably won't see in Europe in the next years. So what is it that we as Europe, can propose as a counter model that is actually going to be competitive. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, perhaps I make a start with that. I think a key component of European competitiveness is diversity and a decentralized network of innovation hubs. When we have delegations from China or elsewhere, and we give a presentation about the German economic model and success factors, I always say, look, the federal system, how nasty it gets and how complicated it makes things, is a vital part of our strength, because it means that throughout Germany we do not have the 1 or 2 economic hubs and the rest is desert or only for tourism. It means that we have more flexibility, more structural strength and resilience at the end because of that decentralized approach. If you bring that to a European perspective, isn't that wonderful that Europe is such a place of freedom? You would associate this term of freedom with the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. But we should focus on that. You have the freedom to move, cross borders without even getting to know that you cross a border, work wherever you like, but also the freedom that you, when you are ill, you go to a hospital and you get the best medical treatment, no matter whether you are a millionaire or not. These are elements of freedom that make us attractive for at least a certain target group of brains, of people, but also of companies and investments. So we have to talk about that. Our Silicon Valley is not a place, it's a network. And if we manage to somehow make that network alive, turn it into a machine by giving it a cyber-physical shared infrastructure and then promoting it, bringing that message to the world, because, as Frauke Goll correctly said, it's super bad also in terms of investment promotion. If we are always in that negative mood, if you go to a dating platform and you write in your profile, oh, I'm quite a boring person and I'm rather sick and old and I will forbid you everything, nobody will ask you for a rendezvous, or only very strange people. So don't do that. Don't do that. We are the greatest continent on earth. We don't have to make it great again. It's already great. We need that.
I mean, yeah. Please.
Can I
sure.
pick up on that? So because you said, can we compete? Can we we cannot beat the Americans at their own game, and I don't think we have to. So first of all, we should focus on making Europe better, not on sort of being better Americans, but being better Europeans. So that's one. Second, I also do want to point out that 500 billion is private money. A lot of it is from a Japanese investment fund. We could if we do things well, they could come here too. So, but just in general, sort of picking up on that, we need to really figure out sort of enable, so that decentralization works if we enable individuals, groups, organizations around Europe to do better European things than they've done before, and sort of rather than sort of it's great to sort of think here, how do we coordinate things, how do we think about, but ultimately we need to be able to enable individuals, companies, and others around Europe to do more.
I mean, this idea of the European strength being networks, being clusters, being working together versus a few small companies competing heavily, I get that. My question is, does it need anybody governing it, maybe? Because from my experience, I get a lot of press releases about new corporations, about new initiatives, about initiatives working together with each other. And I always find it interesting, but to be quite honest, I don't have the overview anymore. So do we maybe have even too many different initiatives, and how do we tie it all together in order to make it work? Does it have to be tied together? Is it maybe even okay that they are parallel structures? What's your thoughts? I can address these questions personally, or you can just dive in.
Well, speaking for the public administration, I would say the GovTech campus is one of these areas. What we are trying to do is, obviously, there is a gap for the German administration, at least, in terms of adapting new technology and making it available in the administration itself, but also for us as citizens. So what we are trying to do is bring together and join the public administration with tech companies. That also includes science, of course, and it also includes startups, because it's really difficult for startups, also in Germany, connecting to the state and doing projects together. Why is that? Because maybe some of you know about the famous Ausschreibungen you have to do in Germany, and the preconditions in order to be considered as a, maybe you had a brilliant idea about AI, but you can't deliver your solution to the state because you can't fulfill the requirements. So that's not the nicest experience to have, and we are going to bridge these gaps in order to bring the state together with these tech companies and at least allow the state also to adapt these new technologies. So that's at least for the public administration one possibility to be able to adopt new technology.
Okay, so I would take this over directly. So actually with the appliedAI Institute, and Jakob, you said this in the beginning, we see ourselves as a harbor for new technologies, for example, especially, of course, AI, and using and developing AI in a trustworthy sense. So the question we brought up here now really directly fits to our mission. So our mission is that we say we want to empower the professionals in the AI innovation ecosystem to really develop and apply latest AI technologies responsibly. So now we are talking about sovereignty, we are talking about a huge change and a transformation process. And this is a transformation process on very different levels. And it's absolutely necessary, as you also mentioned directly before me, that we really bridge the gaps. And we have now players in this innovation ecosystem like the academia, universities, but we also have the companies. And also there we do have really a lot of huge differences and diversity. And we also have the society. And also there we haven't talked about. So for me, it's really essential. And I know in the very beginning when we started with our activities, that also my own employees said, so who are we focusing on? And I said, yeah, we have a stakeholder approach, because what we really need is to really empower all of us to collaborate, but also to learn about the new technologies, to really get enabled and bring the whole potential of new technologies into life. And this is because you asked the question, what do we really need for competitiveness? And you highlighted, Daniel, also the question of the federal system, which can be a very, very positive effect and also a great strength, because as we see, if we can come over those borders and really find in Europe, but also in Germany with the different states that we have, ways especially to work with the new technologies, also bringing in regulation, for example, in a easy way, I want to say, not as everyone else always would say, oh, now the Germans and the Europeans are coming and all are talking about regulation and that stuff. No, we have a task to do. And this we only can do if we do it together. And therefore, this will also strengthen our competitiveness. This is the term for collaboration. But what I find very, very interesting, because we're also always combining competitiveness to the financial investments, I would say that we do have a learning as well. So last year we made the study about the generative AI startups in Europe. And with that, no big surprise, we see that all the startups, the AI startups in Europe, working in the Gen AI field, had 10 times less money than the two largest startups in the United States. So all European AI startups 10 times less than in the United States. So this is an amount. However, in the beginning of the year, I saw another study, and of course I know, don't trust studies you haven't done yourself. Nevertheless, don't talk about numbers, but I think it's nevertheless very interesting, because there it says, in Germany we have the 4th place in the richest people, taking them all together. So after the US, China, and India, then comes Germany. But when it comes to the reinvest, then we see a huge gap, because the others are reinvesting much, much more than we do. And we can see this, and now I'm taking the comparison to the US, I know. But last year I was in Texas with our state ministry, and we went to a startup hub. And this was really interesting, because they had a large competition. And even the very, very early stage startups that won the competition in the next year already brought something back into the fund. And I have the feeling in Europe and in Germany, we're always looking to the state saying, okay, we need more money. But I also think we really also here should join the forces, bringing also together public and private money in a better sense to have a larger fund and also more possibilities to support our startups that we have.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because I was about to talk about money again. Because, I mean, that all being said, what you said, and that is true, but yeah, you pointed it out. There is a huge gap between the US and Europe, and probably also China, when it comes to venture capital. And you started talking about it. I'm wondering, I mean, in your region, there is a lot of money coming from a company that made its money in a totally different kind of sector. And I'm wondering, do we need, like, do the rich have to contribute more? And not in the sense of a tax, but in the sense of a felt responsibility to invest in the future.
Well, if you look at me, then I have to give the first answer. I would say that is about, and we had this term before, that is about building up powerful and smart ecosystems. Mm-hmm. If you have a look at the Schwarz-Gruppe as an example, now the digital part, Schwarz Digits, is a major and strong part of the business portfolio. I think almost the future as big as Lidl and Kaufland. So that is, it's a transformation, both for the established big companies, big groups, no matter which sector you have, and for the startups and for social entrepreneurship. The challenge is, and I think we all did a good job in the Heilbronn region to do that, to bring these different players together in a functional way, so that they can benefit from each other. That is not easy. It's not easy if you then have a look at our different regulatory frameworks. Bavarian University law being applied in Baden-Württemberg was easier for TUM to build up a campus in Singapore than building up one in Baden-Württemberg, in the neighboring state. Non-for-profit law versus for-profit regulations. All of that is a mighty challenge, and of course it gets more complex if you consider that at the European level. But still, we have to do that step. We have to emerge. For most of my career, I was a cluster manager organizing industry clusters. We have to move from cluster management towards ecosystem management. We have to step out of these branch silos, different segments and focus on new value chains or even bundles of value chains. And we can do that in a super smart way on the European level. We started 2 years ago a campaign of funding, sponsoring so-called Erasmus cafes in different European regions. Because we always spend some money per year for student marketing, or that we have advertisement in newspapers, come and study that great master program in Heilbronn. Now we cut off certain part of that money and said, hey, instead of these advertisements or these expensive Google ads, we go to some interesting places, very different ones, Portugal, Praga, Kosovo, Pristina, and we find interesting, let's say, first hubs or nuclei of civil engagement, of technology transfer, and we give them 50,000 euro per year each, and say, with these 50,000 euro, build up your platform, bring us ideas about new technologies, bring these people to Heilbronn, we will give them a stage, we will award them, and we will then discuss with them whether this can lead to an investment or something else. And that is so super interesting, because with not too big investment, all of a sudden you have access to that wealth of innovation from different parts. When I went to Kosovo last time, on the Eurowings flight, last draw, person next to me turned out to be the head of the IT department of the Kosovo financial authorities. He said, well, we have a GIZ project, we work with German financial authorities, they should coach us in digitalization, but well, it was a little bit ashamed. At the end, he said, we in Kosovo, our financial authority has 50 digitalization projects per year, and the Munich Finanzamt has one. So when we talk about these regulatory sandboxes, we find them in other places, also in the neighboring countries of the EU. You do not even, can also move a little bit out of the EU borders. If we link them to each other, if we find a way of European technology transfer, we perhaps may find a smarter approach of combining these strengths and creating a critical mass, not only of money, but also of innovation, of application, pilot application, because that is usually what we miss in Germany. We are super good in inventing things and super bad in applying things. So we can build up such an ecosystem. That was a long answer to a short question, but it has to be a long answer. I think at the end, these combined ecosystems could eventually create something like a new type of special economic zone for Europe. Not the old type of special economic zone, custom-free area with walls around it, but a smart cyber-physical special innovation zone. And if we manage to do that, and we find that at least we get some flexibility in our regulatory framework, we are super competitive on a global stage.
Yes.
I want to add something very briefly to that. I think, look, talented people want to work with other talented people. If you think about it, actually, talent is one of the strengths of Europe. But there's a study, 1/3 of Europeans leave to go to the US for opportunities, for money, you can say, but really it's to also work with other interesting people, right? So there's also, something that was going around last year, and someone did a study, the top 10 AI researchers in the in the United States, 8 of them were not born in the United States, right? So let's think about ways, which you alluded to, we all talked about it. It's how do we attract, really, more talented people to begin with, make the Europeans stay here. You have a great social program, which Silicon Valley doesn't have. But think of other ways, really. It's like smart people want to work with other smart people. Given what the Trump administration is doing, firing all the scientists and researchers, hey, now it's a great time to start advertise and market what's great about Europe and hire those people, create an environment for them to grow and to thrive, and they'll be here.
I would have more questions about money. You want to add something as well?
No, I very much agree with my esteemed colleagues on the panel. It's absolutely true that US has the lead in the talent, but most of that talent is not from the US. US attracts talent You look at all, a lot of the top scientists, many of them are European, who are working in the US and not here. So, but, not only do smart people want to work with other smart people, they also want to work on exciting things. And so, part of this sort of going back to your comment about the initiatives, we have a lot of initiatives, should we coordinate the initiatives? At some level, I think we need to be able to enable, I don't think it's a problem to have too many initiatives. I don't, especially sort of bottom-up initiatives. I think we need to try to help them to get to scale. And so, one of the sort of talking about there was a comment about the wealth and other things. So part of the concern I have about Europe is sort of this somewhat of a conservative attitude. We're a business school. We educate a lot of managers of all kinds of companies. And sort of especially like, AI programs and other things, there's a lot of this attitude that, look, this is what our company has always done. This is what we continue to do. We're a small company. We will always remain a small company. And that is just not going to drive in the age of AI. I'm sorry. Like, you need to be able to sort of think, what are we going to be in the future? We're not necessarily going to be at all like we used to be. This is where we came from, but this does not have to be where we remain. And same thing at the continental level. It doesn't mean that just because we were good at automotives, for a long time, that we always have to remain. We can do all kinds of things.
Let's say we will, and it works. Then we have a tech ecosystem, and it will be adopted in the Mittelstand. The question is, will it be for the better? So that's the impact part. And now we have to brag a bit. We stood together with Richard Socher, who gave the last panel on the stage below at the lunch and talked about the topic of our panel. And he was immediately, I have a lot to say about that. And he told us about his analogy of the Pareto optimization of, I don't know, everything. So there is, so if you think about it, you have, you can be as innovative as possible, have no rules, have everything that you need to be just technically innovative, or you ensure safety. And you can go in both extremes, or you can find a middle ground, and that's the Pareto idea, a curve where this has its optimum. And he said Europe is too much on the side of safety, and the US is too much on the side of everything goes. What's your take?
He's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
So but then the question is, so what do we do about it? Like in terms of, that trade-off between safety and innovation, regulation, do we over-regulate, do we under-regulate? It does exist, but there's certain ways in which we can try to, for instance, change the trade-off a little bit. So one of the things that sort of economists have studied and sort of found it quite useful is Denmark, for instance, has a very flexible labor market but provides security. That is sort of seems to be very good for entrepreneurship and other things. That you can think about other sort of labor market activities and other things. There's ways in which you can change the trade-offs.
Yeah, so actually as we are talking about sovereignty also in this sense, and I really think, of course, we have to find the right balance between the questions. And we were talking in the beginning about our European way and how this could be. And we already also see that we have a lot of very, very good things, but also that in some sense it would be also maybe a bit better if we at least have a bit more an innovation thought, or also a better risk alignment. Yeah, that's true. So for that, I think what we really need, and we are working very, very closely all together also with the AI office, but also with the different ministries on the national level, on the regional level. We are also having expert circles with different other countries in Europe to also see how can we really shape now a balanced way, because I think what nobody of us really needs is to have this DSGVO drama we had and live this once again with the AI Act and the regulation. So we really do not need that. So we have to take care, and this is also really in the sense of what I said in the beginning, we really have to take action now. The regulation is getting in place in several steps. So the first step already happened for the forbidden systems. And nevertheless, there are a lot of discussions going around. We have the code of practice, which is also in a community way handled, and there are consultations. And it's really important that we also there, from an interdisciplinary approach, take action and keep up the voice to really go into the topics, not at the end when the regulation is fully in place in 1.5 years nearly. So really go into that now to really find this balanced way and nevertheless ensure our sovereignty that we have. And what is very important for me, and we we didn't touch this until now so much, but if you also look at the impact perspective, and what is in my sense also really, really important is the enablement and the empowerment of the people. We were talking about the talent, and we are talking a lot about those people actually already working with new technologies, with AI in the tech field and so on. But also to create this sovereignty, it's also really important to draw attention to the application side, to draw attention to our German Mittelstand, but also to the whole sector of GovTech, for example, and also the social initiatives, because also there we do have a lot of possibilities using AI technologies, for example, and really creating a huge impact. So for that, for example, in the last year, we started an initiative called the Social Impact Republic, where we try to bring together startups from the social and public impact field together with tech experts to really, through those AI technologies or technical developments, help those startups to create more impact in the field they are working on in social and public interest. So it's also really important when we talk about sovereignty that we also take this in account, and that also in terms of democracy and European values, really try to raise the AI literacy that we have for all in developing and the application of AI.
I mean, to put this in a bit broader terms, even like talking about regulation as a bureaucratic challenge, to say the least, totally get it. But the vision of the future that AI can bring are so almost diametrically. You have people thinking about what an immense, prosperous progress it can bring for humanity, solve climate change, all this. Or, on the other hand, you have people warning about a list of problems of which widespread unemployment is not even the biggest. So how do we ensure we get a good version of the future?
Okay, I would say taking over responsibility is the most important part. So, and really diving into the question how we want to use it. And of course, maybe there will be a wrong use. Okay, that can be. But this can happen with everything, you know. Also, a kitchen knife can be used in a very wrong way. However, especially when we're always looking at this term of how we develop AI technologies. And of course, it's our responsibility. The technical system does not only do what it wants, it's what we bring in. And there we really have to see, we have to look at the ethical parts, for example. We have to look also in terms of what we can do with it and how we use it to empower the people and take responsibility in how we want to use these powerful tools that AI technologies are. For me, personally, it's really a great opportunity that we have when we use it as tools.
I would like to add on that, because it's strange that we read much more often in the newspaper about AI itself, bigger large language model, and how many $100 billion or euros are being pumped into that, but way less about what can be achieved with that, nor even what should be achieved with that, and how do these visions of the AI-supported future look like. If we turn to these visions, it always means that AI, yes, it's a tool, and it's only one tool in a setting of other tools that have to be combined. So we should be able to define relevant social missions like, let's beat cancer within 5 years by support of AI and other technologies. Let's significantly fight the hunger in the world using AI, etc. Missions like that. I think the power of an ecosystem comes from the capability to define relevant missions. And these missions are the super big ones. AI now helps us to have broader visions, bigger ambitions, and to realize them faster. We have to be able to draft these positive pictures, visions. And then from these visions, we come with mission statements. And for the mission statements, we need teams of traditional Mittelstand, startup companies, big industry, venture capital, and we will find it if we find the right mission. So I would say that is a key duty for all of us. Come with the right story and not with some blah blah.
Who's we? Yeah, okay, first. Sounds good. Who is we? So is it a company? Is it a cluster, an ecosystem? Or to add that as a possibility, is it, again, the state? Do we need something like a DARPA, where the state funds research and development?
So,
yeah,
all of the above. All of the above. You know, so I do think that something like DARPA or something like state funding for fundamental research in these areas would be needed. I fully agree with that. However, sort of one of the things in terms of this is that the current technology has an immense overhang in terms of applications. There's a lot of applications that are possible with the existing technology that have not yet been developed. So, you know, and somebody's going to come up with those. And so how do we handle this? We can set rules on sort of these kind of applications are okay, these kind of not. But fundamentally, we need to try to have flexibility in terms of the companies, the managers, the systems to fund, you know, the ability to create startups, the ability to adapt to this, because there's so much potential for different applications that we have no idea yet. You know, Manus, the sort of a Chinese agent, sort of surprised a lot of people a couple of weeks ago, but it's just a very nice tool built on Claude 3.7. All of the things existed. You know, that could be done. There's plenty of other things like that could emerge suddenly because somebody has a new idea as to how we could use these LLMs that are already out there. So what I'm trying to say is, like, we need we need mission statements and other things, but fundamentally we need adaptability, flexibility to handle all of the innovations that could come from anywhere, whether it's China, US, Mittelstand, or anywhere.
I would add on that also that because you ask, like, who is it? And I think it's all of us. Everybody needs to be brave and start at his or her point to pick these things up. In the end, we are all citizens, and it's on us. We have the possibilities to really get something going, and we shouldn't underplay all the time. So we do have strength, we do have science, we do have the companies, and we also have money. Maybe it's not sufficient, but let's spend it wise. And therefore, my call would also be a call to action. So we can sit here also in 2 years and repeat the discussions again and again, but it's also about taking action. Take action at the point everybody of you are, and in 5 or 10 years, Europe will look different.
Thank you so much. I would have more questions, but our time is coming to an end, and maybe you have also some questions for our panelists. That was quick. Please.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, take a mic, please.
First of all, thank you for this inspiration and all the thoughts you shared with us. It's very motivating and encouraging. Especially what you said with the social impact and how important it is also to make sure that we don't go the way that we widen the gap, which is somehow already taking place due to other reasons. So what I would like to ask you, in this time of uncertainty, which is already on, and this time of uncertainty, which is going to be even, let's say, more urgent in the future, where we have the opportunity, chances, and risk and chances, right, to shape, as you said, in a positive way. Where, talking about ecosystems, where do you see the buffer? Because I think you're right, we need to take risks, and it's not the right way to do it like in the past, by laws and regulations. This is hindering us. However, it's also important not to close our eyes before the possibility that a lot of people might get harmed, maybe also even with as an impact point for let's say, probably different interests. This is a vulnerability phase we are in, and I don't want our society to actually get hit socially. So how do you have any idea of a buffer for probably things that go wrong when people are harmed? Or is there any idea, because ecosystems, they have buffers, right? Like pH also. So what kind of buffer could we think of?
Look, I will take a shot. I don't think there's a specific answer, but let me just share a framework. Okay, so I would say Europe, don't beat yourself up on too much regulation. Because the honest truth is right now everybody's like, oh, it's too much regulation. What's the other extreme? No regulation? Well, that's definitely not what we want, right? So the idea is truly to find the sweet spot. What we want is regulation. Look, what we don't want is regulation that stifle innovation. So make it easy. I think it's all over the talk over the last 2 days. Make it easy for the startups, for innovative ideas to come to fruition. In fact, we need to find ways to help them to do that. But we do need regulation on, for example, think about the last internet wave. What happened? This concentration of power into 5 big companies. And we actually need regulation to regulate that anti-compete. That's absolutely where regulation will come into place. So I think let's not just say, oh, regulation it's bad, because right now it seems to be fashionable, regulating too much. But I think it's...
Yeah, perfect. So, Xili, as you now took the point of the regulation as a buffer, I will take education as the second buffer that we need. So what is really, really important is that nevertheless, whether you have heard from AI before or not, whether you are yourself an expert or if you just use AI technologies, it's really important that from a buffer side and from a sovereignty side, we know what the technology is about, what it can do and what it cannot do. This is really, really important, and especially when we look at the society, because what we see there is we haven't talked about misinformation, we haven't talked about harmful information today, or until now, but this is already taking place, and we really need to, and also have the need to give people the chance that are not so close with the technology in an easy way to understand what is happening there, but also sharpen their democratic values and the underlying skills that are necessary to make up your own opinion, your own mind, and think of whether that what you see is really the truth or could be the truth, and whether this is your opinion or not. So this is, I think, from the education part, a buffer we have, but also there we really, really have to take action, and we have to take action now.
I'm getting the sign to wrap up. I'm abusing my power by giving you two the opportunity to add something, but keep it brief, okay?
Okay, so you know, I like your education perspective, being an educator myself, so I highly recommend that. But sort of on the buffer side, the one thing that I think would be really important is to be able to do something when you start realizing that things are going wrong. We have now accumulated plenty of evidence of social media and teenage girls, for instance, and we still can't do anything about it. You know, we just keep, you know, bots on social media, you know, foreign influence on social media, all of these. We keep accumulating evidence, but we seem unwilling, incapable to do anything about it. And so this worries me is that if we start, you know, things start going wrong and we just somehow are incapable of doing anything about it.
So super short final buffer that I would like to add. Let's avoid these final yes or no decisions. Give people the opportunity to test. Should I become startup entrepreneur, dedicate my whole life to that one business idea, or should I look for a job in a company? Future of work, you can do both. You can test something. You can use blockchain, etc., to live in both worlds and be more flexible. Perhaps my generation not so much, but my daughter, I think when she grew up, she won't even understand these traditional job profiles anymore that we have today. So that will help us, allow people to test something and also press a little bit the reset button if things go wrong.
All right.
One sentence, and that's transparency. So we need to be transparent about what we are doing and take the people with us.
Okay. Thank you so much. You see, I was already. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much as well for coming to our masterclass in this plenary room.